The cardboard sign beside Amjad al-Rashid read, "Homeless father and daughter, anything helps," in carefully printed letters, while his 8-year-old daughter Layla sat quietly next to him on the sidewalk outside the Morrison Financial Building, both of them dressed in traditional Arab thobes that made their apparent poverty even more striking to the wealthy executives who hurried past without making eye contact. What none of the passers-by knew was that the man begging for spare change possessed a fortune worth over $200 million, and that this elaborate deception was part of a desperate plan to find a mother figure for his daughter by observing the character of women who showed kindness to strangers when no reward or recognition was expected. When Keisha Washington emerged from the building after her night shift cleaning offices and approached them with genuine concern instead of the usual avoidance or pity, Amjad realized he might have found exactly the kind of compassionate heart that Layla needed to heal from the loss of her biological mother 3 years earlier. The idea for this unconventional approach to finding a potential partner had emerged from months of failed attempts to meet women through conventional means, where his wealth attracted gold diggers and social climbers who saw his daughter as an obstacle to overcome rather than a precious child who deserved genuine maternal love. Every dating app conversation, charity gala introduction, and business networking event had produced the same result. Women who were interested in his money and status but showed little enthusiasm for the responsibilities of step-parenthood, especially when it involved a grieving child who still cried for her mama in the middle of the night. The transformation from millionaire businessman to apparent homeless father had required meticulous planning and psychological preparation that went far beyond simply changing clothes and creating false documentation. Amjad had spent weeks studying the behavioral patterns of people experiencing homelessness, learning how to move with the careful invisibility that poverty imposed on those who depended on public spaces for survival, while avoiding the attention of authorities who might view their presence as problematic or threatening. The choice of location outside the Morrison Financial Building was strategic because Amjad's business dealings had taught him that this particular area attracted both wealthy professionals who might reveal their true character when confronted with human suffering, and working-class service employees whose off-hours interactions with apparent homeless individuals would demonstrate their natural compassion without the performative charity that often characterized wealthy people's public displays of generosity. Layla had been asking increasingly desperate questions about why she was the only child in her elite private school who didn't have a mother to braid her hair, help with homework, or hold her when nightmares made sleep impossible. The succession of expensive nannies and tutors had provided professional care, but could never fill the emotional void that had been growing larger as she became old enough to understand that her family was fundamentally different from those of her classmates. The child's emotional needs had become increasingly complex as she approached adolescence, when having a female role model would become crucial for her development and self-understanding. Amjad had consulted with child psychologists who emphasized the importance of maternal figures for young girls, but their academic theories provided little practical guidance for how to find someone whose character and values would make them suitable for such an important role in his daughter's life. The traditional thobe that Amjad wore had belonged to his grandfather, a reminder of cultural heritage that he hoped would help him connect with his daughter's identity, while also serving as a costume that disguised his true economic status from the people he hoped to observe. Layla's matching dress had been sewn by his grandmother years earlier, when family traditions seemed more important than the business empire that had consumed his attention until his wife's death forced him to confront what truly mattered in life. The clothing choice also served to highlight their apparent otherness in American society, because Amjad understood that people's reactions to their cultural identity would reveal important information about tolerance, acceptance, and the kind of prejudices that might affect his daughter's future relationships and social integration. Sitting on the cold concrete for 3 hours had been more physically uncomfortable than any business meeting he had ever endured, but the experience had taught him valuable lessons about how society treated people who appeared to be in desperate circumstances. The overwhelming majority of pedestrians avoided eye contact entirely, while the few who acknowledged their presence did so with expressions of pity, disgust, or superiority that revealed more about their own character than about the apparent homeless family seeking assistance. The social experiment had been profoundly educational for Amjad, who had never experienced the systematic dehumanization that accompanied visible poverty, and it forced him to confront his own privileges and assumptions about people whose circumstances he had never bothered to understand, despite his occasional charitable donations to organizations that served homeless populations. The morning routine had become a ritual that both he and Layla approached with nervous anticipation, because each encounter with potential observers provided new information about human nature and social compassion that would inform his evaluation of whether any particular individual possessed the qualities necessary to become part of their family. Keisha Washington emerged from the Morrison building at exactly 6 a.m., her cleaning cart evidence of the night shift work that allowed her to support her 3 children while pursuing a nursing degree through online courses, completed during quiet hours, when most of the building's occupants had gone home. At 28, she possessed the kind of quiet strength and practical wisdom that came from successfully managing multiple responsibilities while maintaining optimism about the future, despite current challenges. Her shift had been particularly demanding that evening because the executive offices on the upper floors had hosted a late-night meeting that left conference rooms littered with expensive catering remnants and presentation materials that required careful handling, while the executives themselves had departed without any acknowledgement of the extra work their activities had created for the cleaning staff. The contrast between the casual waste of wealthy people and her own family's careful resource management had been on Keisha's mind as she completed her final tasks and prepared to head home, making her even more sensitive to the sight of apparent need when she encountered the father and daughter sitting outside the building where she had just finished working. Her first instinct upon seeing the father and daughter sitting outside her workplace was concern rather than suspicion or judgment, because her own experience with financial insecurity had taught her that homelessness could happen to anyone through circumstances beyond their control, and that children especially deserved compassion, regardless of their family's situation. "Are you two okay?" Keisha asked quietly, approaching them with the careful respect that one human being should show another regardless of economic circumstances. "It's pretty cold out here, and this little girl looks like she might be hungry." The genuine concern in her voice immediately distinguished Keisha from the dozens of other people who had passed by during the morning hours, and Amjad felt his heart race as he recognized that he might be encountering exactly the kind of person he had been hoping to find through this unconventional experiment. Her approach was neither condescending nor performative, but reflected the natural instinct to help that came from someone who understood struggle firsthand and had developed empathy through her own experiences with economic uncertainty and single parenthood. "We're managing," Amjad replied, trying to stay in character while also observing how Keisha interacted with Layla, who had been coached to remain quiet during their street performance, but whose natural curiosity about this kind stranger was beginning to overcome her instructions. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Keisha asked, directing her attention to Layla with the kind of gentle warmth that children instinctively recognize as safe and caring. The way Keisha positioned herself at Layla's eye level and spoke directly to the child rather than through her father demonstrated an understanding of child psychology and communication that impressed Amjad with its intuitive sophistication, suggesting that her own parenting experience had taught her how to make children feel valued and heard as individuals. "My name is Layla," the little girl replied, her voice carrying the politeness that had been drilled into her through years of elite private school education, but which now seemed incongruous with their apparent circumstances. "That's a beautiful name," Keisha said with a smile that reached her eyes and conveyed genuine delight in meeting a new person rather than performing social politeness. "Are you cold? I have a jacket in my car that might fit you." The offer to share her own possessions with a stranger's child revealed exactly the kind of selfless generosity that Amjad had been hoping to find, and he watched carefully as Keisha continued to focus her attention on Layla's comfort and welfare, rather than asking intrusive questions about their circumstances or offering unsolicited advice about social services. "I'm okay," Layla replied, but her shivering contradicted her words and made Keisha's concern even more apparent. Without waiting for permission, Keisha walked to her car and returned with a warm jacket that she wrapped around Layla's shoulders with the kind of maternal care that the child had been missing for years. The simple gesture of protection and nurturing brought tears to Amjad's eyes as he realized he was witnessing exactly the kind of instinctive mothering that his daughter needed. The jacket itself was clearly one of Keisha's own possessions, rather than something she carried specifically for charitable purposes, which made her sacrifice even more meaningful because it demonstrated spontaneous generosity rather than calculated philanthropy. "I work in this building," Keisha explained, sitting down on the sidewalk beside them instead of maintaining the physical distance that most people used to separate themselves from apparent homeless individuals. "I just finished my shift, but I have some time before I need to get home to my kids. Would you like to get some breakfast?" The invitation to share a meal represented more than simple charity, because Keisha's willingness to spend her own time and money on strangers demonstrated the kind of character and values that extended far beyond momentary kindness to encompass genuine caring about other people's welfare. Her decision to sit on the concrete beside them, rather than standing above them, showed an intuitive understanding of power dynamics and human dignity that many wealthy philanthropists never developed, despite their extensive charitable activities and social justice rhetoric. "That's very generous of you," Amjad replied, his voice carrying genuine gratitude for kindness that he knew was motivated by compassion rather than expectation of reward or recognition. "There's a diner around the corner that serves good food at reasonable prices," Keisha continued, standing up and extending her hand to help Layla to her feet with the kind of natural protectiveness that made Amjad's heart soar with hope. As they walked toward the restaurant, Keisha engaged Layla in conversation about school, friends, and interests with the kind of genuine attention that made the little girl light up in ways that Amjad hadn't seen since her mother's death. The transformation in his daughter's demeanor confirmed that Keisha possessed exactly the maternal warmth and intuitive understanding that could help heal the emotional wounds that had been festering for years. The questions Keisha asked were thoughtful and age-appropriate, demonstrating knowledge of child development that went beyond casual interaction to suggest someone who understood how to communicate effectively with children and make them feel valued and interesting as individuals, rather than just cute accessories to adult conversations. The diner was a modest establishment that catered to working-class customers rather than the wealthy executives who dominated the nearby office buildings, and Keisha's familiarity with the staff and menu suggested that she was a regular customer who had built relationships based on mutual respect and shared economic circumstances. The restaurant's atmosphere was warm and welcoming, in ways that contrasted sharply with the exclusive establishments where Amjad usually dined, and he found himself appreciating the genuine hospitality that came from people who understood economic struggle and treated all customers with dignity, regardless of their apparent means. "Order whatever you want," Keisha told Layla, as they settled into a booth, her generosity extending to ensuring that the child had choices and autonomy, rather than simply accepting whatever was offered. During breakfast, their conversation revealed aspects of Keisha's life that impressed Amjad with their complexity and responsibility. She was raising 3 children as a single mother, while working full-time and pursuing education that would allow her to transition into healthcare, demonstrating exactly the kind of determination and prioritization of family welfare that he wanted to provide as an example for Layla. Her stories about balancing work, education, and parenting revealed organizational skills and time management abilities that would have impressed any business executive, but which were being applied to family welfare rather than profit maximization, creating exactly the kind of value system that Amjad hoped would influence his daughter's development. "My kids are everything to me," Keisha explained, when Layla asked about her family, her voice carrying the fierce love and protective instinct that Amjad recognized as exactly what his daughter needed from a mother figure. "I work nights so I can be home when they get out of school, and I'm studying to become a nurse so I can eventually provide them with better opportunities." The explanation of her motivation and long-term planning revealed someone whose decisions were driven by love for her children rather than personal ambition, creating exactly the kind of family-centered values that Amjad hoped would help heal the emotional wounds that Layla carried from losing her mother at such a young age. "What about you?" Keisha asked, her natural curiosity and friendliness leading her to show interest in their background and circumstances without the invasive questioning that often accompanied offers of help from social service organizations. The question created an opportunity for Amjad to share carefully edited truths about his situation, without revealing his wealth or the deception that had brought him to the sidewalk outside her workplace. Layla's mother died when she was little, and I'm trying to figure out how to give her everything she needs, he replied. The admission of single parenthood and loss created immediate connection between them because Keisha understood the challenges of raising children alone and the constant worry about whether individual efforts could adequately substitute for the support that two-parent families provided. That must be really difficult, Keisha said with genuine sympathy that revealed her capacity for empathy and understanding. Kids need so much attention and guidance, and trying to provide everything by yourself can be overwhelming. The conversation about parenting challenges continued throughout breakfast, with Keisha sharing practical advice about managing homework, handling behavioral problems, and maintaining emotional connection with children despite the demands of work and education that consumed most adult energy and attention. Her insights about child development and family dynamics impressed Amjad with their sophistication and wisdom, suggesting that her parenting experience had taught her lessons about nurturing and guidance that his wealth and education had never provided, despite his deep love for Layla and his commitment to being the best father possible. The hardest part is helping them understand that working so much doesn't mean you love them less, Keisha continued, revealing the kind of emotional intelligence and communication skills that Amjad hoped would help Layla process her own complicated feelings about family, loss, and belonging. As breakfast concluded, Keisha insisted on paying the bill despite their apparent financial need, demonstrating the kind of generosity and dignity that transcended economic circumstances and reflected deeper values about treating others with respect, regardless of their situation. I come here every morning after work, she explained, as they prepared to leave. If you're still in the neighborhood tomorrow, maybe we could have breakfast again. The invitation to continue their friendship suggested that Keisha's interest in them went beyond momentary charity, to include genuine care about their welfare and a desire to maintain connection that could provide ongoing support rather than just temporary assistance. Over the following weeks, Amjad continued his deception by returning to the same location each morning, where Keisha would find them after completing her night shift, and invite them for breakfast conversations that deepened their relationship, while allowing him to observe her character, values, and approach to life in ways that confirmed his initial impression that she possessed exactly the qualities he hoped to find in a potential partner and mother figure for Layla. Their daily encounters became a routine that both families looked forward to, with Keisha's children occasionally joining them for weekend breakfasts that allowed Amjad to observe how she managed multiple relationships and maintained family harmony despite the stresses of work and education. Their conversations revealed Keisha's dreams, struggles, and the strength that had carried her through difficult circumstances while maintaining optimism and dedication to her children's welfare. Her stories about overcoming obstacles through determination and community support impressed him with their resilience and wisdom. I want my kids to know that education and hard work can change your circumstances, Keisha explained. During one of their morning meetings, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who had experienced both hardship and progress through personal effort. But I also want them to understand that being poor doesn't make you less valuable as a person, and that helping other people is more important than accumulating wealth. The philosophy about values and priorities aligned perfectly with what Amjad wanted to teach Layla about character and social responsibility, but it also created guilt about the deception that was allowing him to evaluate Keisha without her knowledge of his true circumstances and motivations. After 6 weeks of morning encounters and developing genuine friendship, Amjad decided that he needed to reveal his true identity and explain the unusual circumstances that had led him to masquerade as a homeless father. The conversation would require careful explanation to avoid making Keisha feel manipulated or deceived, while also expressing his sincere interest in pursuing a relationship that could benefit both their families. I need to tell you something important about who I really am, Amjad said during their next breakfast meeting, his voice carrying the nervousness of someone whose deception was about to be exposed. I haven't been completely honest about our situation. The admission of deception created immediate tension, because Keisha's expression shifted from friendly openness to wariness as she prepared to learn information that might change her understanding of their entire relationship. We're not actually homeless, Amjad continued, his explanation requiring him to reveal not just his wealth, but his desperate motivation for pursuing such an unusual approach to finding a potential partner. "I'm a businessman, and I pretended to be poor because I was looking for someone with the kind of character and values that I wanted to find for my daughter." The revelation of his true identity and motivations created a moment of stunned silence as Keisha processed the implications of what she was hearing, trying to understand why someone would go to such elaborate lengths to deceive people and evaluate them without their knowledge. "You lied to me about everything?" Keisha asked, her voice carrying hurt and confusion rather than anger, because the friendship they had developed had felt genuine despite being based on false premises. "I lied about our financial situation," Amjad replied, his tone carrying genuine remorse for the deception, while also trying to convey that his feelings and interest in her had been completely authentic. "But everything I told you about wanting to find someone who could help me give Layla the family she needs was completely true." The explanation of his motivations did not immediately resolve Keisha's feelings about being deceived, but it did provide context that helped her understand why someone might resort to such unusual methods when conventional approaches to finding relationships had failed to produce results. The conversation continued for hours as Keisha processed the revelation and Amjad explained his perspective on parenting, family, and the challenges of finding authentic relationships when wealth created barriers to genuine connection and trust. "I want to meet your other children," Keisha said finally, her decision to move forward with the relationship reflecting both forgiveness for his deception and genuine interest in the family situation he had described. The meeting between their families exceeded Amjad's most optimistic expectations, because the connection between Keisha's children and Layla was immediate and natural, while Keisha continued to display the kind of maternal warmth and intuitive understanding that had originally attracted his attention during their sidewalk encounters. The relationship that developed between them was built on mutual respect, shared values about family and social responsibility, and genuine affection that had survived the unusual circumstances of their initial meeting. Keisha's integration into their family provided Layla with the maternal figure she had been missing, while also giving Keisha opportunities for personal and professional advancement that her previous circumstances had made difficult to achieve. Years later, when they were married, and Keisha had completed her nursing degree with Amjad's support, they would look back on his deception as an unconventional, but ultimately successful approach to finding love and family in a world where wealth often prevented authentic relationships from developing naturally. Before we wrap this story up, I'd like to congratulate you for reaching this far. And if you enjoyed this story as much as I think you did, then be sure to check out the rest of our channel for more exciting and inspirational stories like this one. And don't forget to show your support by liking and subscribing, so this channel can reach more people just like you. Now, back to the story. The millionaire who had pretended to be homeless had discovered that true wealth was measured by the quality of relationships rather than the quantity of possessions, and that the most valuable partnerships were based on character and compatibility rather than financial calculations and social status. The cleaner who had shown kindness to apparent strangers had transformed not just his family, but his understanding of what made life meaningful, proving that the most important qualifications for parenthood and partnership had nothing to do with money and everything to do with the ability to nurture, guide, and love unconditionally.